Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, we are off to New Hampshire to guess what? To talk about Logan. Because there is something very wrong with him. When a beloved couple went missing while out for their routine walk in the woods, an investigation began. And on the surface, this seemed to lead to this strange man living in the woods. Mountain Dew Man, as he would later be known. A man with a streak of violence. But, just like a little digging, seemed to uncover a man with a history of connections, world travel, money, and maybe some evil that could turn this story on its head. Please subscribe if you want to see new true crime videos every week. Now, let's give it a go. So this story takes us to the city of Concord, New Hampshire. The city of Concord lies in southern New Hampshire. It's the capital of the state, and it has a population of a little over 40,000 people. It's a compact, cozy little New England city. It's got the historical charm, the quality of life, and the beautiful scenery pretty close by. On the eastern side of the city, you cross the Merrimack River and you keep on trucking, lies this area called Alton Woods. There's a load of these apartment buildings, it's leafy, it's perfectly situated between the bustling city and the tempting countryside. And that was where an older couple, they were in their mid-60s, Stephen and Wendy, she went by Wendy, Reid, that's where they lived. Stephen, in 2022, was 67 years old, a local Concord born and raised. He later attended the University of Notre Dame, and after receiving full scholarships to a number of law schools, Stephen decided no. He wanted to dedicate his life to those around him, and so instead of heading off and getting working as a lawyer or whatever, he instead decided to join the Peace Corps. He worked in West Africa for a number of years before returning to the US to work at the headquarters in DC. And it was then that Steve met the love of his life, Wendy. Wendy, 66 years old in 2022, was born in Togo and traveled a lot as a youth as part of the national basketball team. She eventually landed in the US after earning scholarships, and while studying in DC, she met Steve. They were in fact introduced by a mutual friend who knew that Stephen could speak a West African language that she spoke, and so kind of took off from there. Wendy, the outgoing extrovert, Steve, the quieter introvert, and they married in 1984 and will later have 2 children together. Steve would go on to work with a number of NGOs, working on issues like climate change, food security, working back in West Africa, in Bangladesh, in Haiti, Wendy always by his side. Stephen became a real leader, a well-respected guy. Wendy the same, working in universities, helping with refugee resettlement. Very noble causes, the both of them. They were in Haiti in 2010 when that devastating earthquake hit, and they stayed because they just wanted to help out. Then they later went back to Africa to try and help people there. And in 2019, after a lifetime of just helping people, they felt needed help. They decided they were getting older. They went back home to Concord, New Hampshire to, be with their family and their friends. They retired. They did everything together, a very beautiful couple. And one of their favorite things to do was to go hiking, walk in the woods, something they did regularly. And so this is when our story begins. April 20th, 2022. Stephen and Wendy, they went out for a walk, in them woods. They didn't return. They hadn't answered texts or phone calls. Neither. See, it was Wednesday, April 20th, and that day there was a family event that Stephen and Wendy were both due to attend, and when they didn't show their faces, people were like, that's very unlike them. Very good. Odd. And so then people began talking, were like, I haven't actually heard from Stephen or Wendy in a couple of days. Not since Monday. That was Monday, April 18th. Last time they'd heard from Stephen when, they'd been texting each other pretty briefly, and Stephen had said himself and Wendy were going out for one of their usual walks. That was it. The couple would often go for a walk in the nearby Marsh Loop Trail, directly across the interstate from their home. Marsh Loop is a 2-mile hike through the woods. It's peaceful and pretty as it takes you through this, as the name suggests, marshy New England terrain. So with the family becoming pretty worried at this stage, they eventually went to the Reid's apartment in Alton Alton Woods. In the entry to their apartment, they found nothing. Their phones, there was 2 phones there, keys, purses, money, whilst their cars were still parked outside their apartment. It seemed like they'd gone for that walk, takes about 45 minutes, they hadn't been expecting to be gone long, but simply hadn't come back. In fact, that was exactly what had happened. So with that frightening thought, the couple were reported missing to the Concord Police Department. Police arrived, searched the apartment, and then, being informed of the couple's usual routine, began to comb the Marsh Loop Trail area.
Well, investigators admit this is a very strange situation. They have no idea where this couple is right now. Concord police say they were reported missing last night, that they were last seen by family on Easter, and were last heard from on Monday. Now, as far as they know, investigators say the Reids had said that they were going for a hike near where they live, but it's not clear where they were going.
It was shortly after the police, went into those woods that they stumbled across this little encampment. Just there, not far off the main trail. There was a tent, a few other items kind of lying around. There was a young fella there, just camping out. Not a bother on him. Now, the police didn't know if he was camping there, if he was homeless, or if he was simply just, passing through, hiking through the woods. So the police, they asked him, they said, hey, we're here, we're looking for this couple, we believe they came to these woods and haven't been seen since. Your man says, don't know what you're talking about. Haven't seen them, haven't seen anything, and he said he was from Boston, Massachusetts. He said he didn't know shit, that his name was Arthur Kelly, and he was 30 years old. Now, interestingly, when the police ran this name, just to be sure, it came up blank. There was no Arthur Kelly in the system. When told of this, Arthur was like, well, I'm well within my rights to camp wherever I want, so talk to the hand. The police, they didn't ask for ID, they said, you're not in trouble, but they had bigger fish to fry. They let him be. They kept searching the woods for the Reids. They left as Arthur Kelly and his campsite. A campsite which, by the way, was covered with Mountain Dew Code Red cans. Hey, gotta do the do. And so they kept looking. They continued searching that night, April 20th, and began a full-scale search at first light on April 21st. Now, the 2 phones that were found in the Reids' apartment, the police assumed that one was Stephen's and one was Wendy's, but no, neither were Stephen Reid's phones. So the police were having a little thinky think about that, and then, well, that means Stephen probably has his phone with him, wherever he is. They submitted a request to Google for location information. It was at 5 p.m. on the 21st, while the entire area was being searched, that they got back that data. And indeed, the couple had gone to Marsh Loop Trail on April 18th. Stephen and Wendy Reid had entered Marsh Loop Trail at 2:48 p.m. The phone's last data signal was from an area off-trail in the woods at 3:47 p.m. So detectives, searchers, and sniffer dogs went to where the phone had last pinged. And at 6:14 p.m, dogs took interest in a pile of leaves and sticks. This was in a natural depression in the earth. And under that, indeed, were the bodies of the couple. It was a horrifying conclusion and a terrifying realization when the medical examiner would be able to say both Stephen and Wendy had been shot dead. Stephen shot 4 times, Wendy twice. It then seemed they had been dragged here and covered. And so a double homicide investigation began.
Investigators spent last night into this afternoon scouring the area for evidence, and now the Attorney General's office is calling on the public for help.
So anyone who saw the Reids that Monday afternoon, anyone walking on those trails, anyone who has any information related to their disappearance or deaths are asked to contact the Concord Police Department.
And so the police were already suspicious of this Arthur Kelly fellow because they knew he had given them a false name. And his campsite was only a half-mile in the woods from where the Reids' bodies had been found. And so police went back to his campsite. And he was gone. When they went there on April 22nd, it was completely clean. Not even a single can of Mountain Dew was left. It was like this Arthur Kelly had never been there at all. Nothing was left behind. Maybe he went back to mass, who knows, but he quickly became their key suspect. 2 witnesses who frequented the area would also come forward around that time. One said he always walked in the woods and he too had noticed a campsite, a separate one from where they'd first met Arthur Kelly. This witness who had seen this separate campsite in those same woods had been keeping an eye on it since January, so he'd been checking on it every time he went for his normal walk for about 4 months by this stage. But just after the bodies of the Reids were found, next time he went for that same walk, he noticed this time the campsite was burnt out and abandoned. Police, when they were told of this, they didn't initially, think it was related until they went and checked it out, and Mountain Dew Code Red cans were found there too. Also found were some propane tanks, a number of small items, and some euro coins. And another witness would come forward saying she had been on Marsh Loop Trail on Monday, April 18th, the day the Reids went there and were killed, at about the same time. She'd been hiking in those woods with her 2 dogs. She had seen a white man and a black woman walk past her. Assumedly, the Reids, they walked ahead of her, and after then about 10 minutes, she says, she heard gunshots. 5 separate gunshots. She wasn't sure if she could continue. She decided to, and as she kept walking, then she saw a young man standing on the side of the trail, not far from where the bodies would later be found. She said this young man didn't say anything, but he was just like Manson lamps staring at her the entire time. She passed him without a word, but when she looked back, he was still staring at her.
A sketch of a man's profile, someone investigators say was seen near the wooded trail where Stephen and Wendy Reid were mysteriously shot to death last month.
He is someone that investigators believe may have information about these crimes as either a witness or a suspect.
The police were now on the hunt to find this Mountain Dew man, as he would be known. Over the following weeks, more locals would come forward saying they too had seen this Mountain Dew man. They all thought he was homeless. He was seen multiple times between November 2021 and April 2022. Clean-shaven, neatly dressed, but unfriendly to people. Often would only give a curt nod when passed, if even that. More likely to get a sarcastic reply. One person even said they'd heard him yelling and screaming to himself. And they would all say he wasn't seen again after the murders. Police then went to a nearby Walmart to see if they could find where those propane tanks had been purchased, and indeed he had been shopping at that Walmart, this Mountain Dew man. A young man would come in, buy propane tanks, go off into the woods. No one knew anything about him though. He rarely spoke. He never spoke, to be honest with you, so nobody... He was always kind of wearing like hoods, masks, and not seen again after the bodies were found. The police had no idea who he was and continued to search through the burnt out campsite hoping to learn his identity. And at one point they did find a spent shell casing matching those at the crime scene, so they're pretty sure the same guy had camped at both campsites. It wasn't until September that a real break in the case came, if you can believe that. So they were just trying to find out who this guy was, get his identity, but they didn't even know where to begin. Other than the fact that he loved Mountain Dew Code Red. What they did is they went back to that Walmart he was seen shopping at a number of times, and they went through every transaction he had made. And throughout all of these transactions, for the months he had been living there, he'd used 5 separate credit or debit cards. Now, trying to trace those cards led nowhere. They were all prepaid cards. So none linked to a name, and then getting the statements from those cards. Transactions also didn't lead to a name. Except one transaction. There had been a purchase from bulksupplements.com. Several vitamins were ordered to be delivered to a Walgreens near the woods. ID needed to be presented to collect the order. The order had been made by a Logan Clegg. Images of him were the same as the Mountain Dew man. They finally had a name. His real name. They hadn't come across it before, and in the system it brought up Logan Clegg, DOB, January 24th, 1996, and he had been arrested twice before, once in Salt Lake City for shoplifting in August 2020.
He's out. Go back this way. Stop. Go back this way. Pull your hands out of your pockets for me, okay? Pull your hands out of your pocket, dude. Let's go. Pull your hands out. Don't be dumb.
Remember, don't be dumb.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice. What's this? Fist. Open up your fist.
Open up your fist. You're going to go into handcuffs right now because you wouldn't follow our commands to keep your hands out of your pockets.
Which makes us worry.
And it worries us, so we're going to make sure. And that's why you pull your hands out, right? Because if we see that, Oh, that could have been super bad, bro.
That gun's stolen, Logan.
You want to blame the cops for your mistakes. Super weird.
I'm blaming you for turning.
Face the car for me.
Did I get mean to you?
None of us have, but it's our fault.
Oh, it's our fault?
Yeah.
That you had a stolen gun and stole from Walmart?
Yeah. It's our fault.
And I'll try to put in a request to have you do different things next time. Okay.
Hey, Logan, do you understand why you're going to jail?
Oh. No?
Okay. Well, let me explain it to you again. Jail, second-degree felony for possession of a stolen firearm. Misdemeanor A, carrying a concealed weapon without a concealed weapons permit.
Stolen.
And retail theft because you stole from Walmart.
Is that even worth $25?
I don't have any idea. They haven't added it up yet, but
How can they charge me if it's not even worth that much? Well, the
I
state
don't know what state doesn't charge people for thefts under $25, but in Utah, if you take something without paying for it, it's called theft.
I'm still shaking from the fact of you not cooperating initially and having a gun on you. Like, that's so dangerous.
I think I'm gonna shoot you.
I don't know, bro. Like, how am I supposed to know?
Shut up.
now I'm a coward, huh? Okay.
Yeah, 3-on-1,
Okay.
ambushing me at the door, putting me in handcuffs.
Called safety, and I'm glad that was the case. How would you propose we do that differently?
But you give me a chance to
you were
pull it out so we can
If
fight.
you were in
one-on-one.
if you were in my shoes, that's what you want?
Yeah,
Okay.
man to man.
First off, you wouldn't stand any chance whatsoever.
Good, I'd rather die than in prison. Second.
Okay.
For a simple shoplifting, he made a scene. 3 officers took him down and he said he wanted to die rather than go to prison. But he did have a stolen gun on him. 19 days later, he was arrested again, this time during a burglary in progress, an armed burglary in progress. He had another stolen handgun on him. He got 72 days in jail for that and was sentenced to 3 years probation. He also had an active warrant out for another burglary from a town in Utah, northern Utah, called Logan, funnily enough, no relation. He was wanted for skipping out on that probation. Logan Clegg, 26 years old in 2022, was the son of Randall and Tisha, born in Arizona before moving to the state of Washington. His father ended his own life when Logan was 12, and Logan went downhill from there. And see, this is the part in the story when, kind of goes from like young man with like mental health issues to something more. Because he had killed before. In 2018, Spokane, Washington, Logan was identified as a suspect in a fatal stabbing. What Logan said was this. He was walking to his work at McDonald's at midnight when some random guy just attacked him, started baiting 7 shades of shite out of him. Logan just so happened to have a small knife on him and, in self-defense, stabbed him multiple times. Then this attacker ran off and he later died. This attacker/victim was Corey Ward, 30 years old. Logan said it was in self-defense and he refused to take a polygraph, but he was never charged. Corey Ward's family have disagreed with this, saying it was completely out of character for Corey. Corey was a very hard worker, but when not at work, he was lazy as all heck. Corey wouldn't attack or start a fight or anything. It should be noted that Corey was in his apartment, not just roaming the streets. In fact, it's thought that maybe what could have possibly happened is that Logan was outside Corey's apartment and was like messing with his car, scratching it up, whatever. Corey looked out his apartment window, seen this, decided to run down and give this guy a knuckle sandwich. They got into a fight, and Logan, in self-defense, killed him. That Logan maybe was looking for an excuse to kill someone. Then the story gets just like a little bit stranger. In October 2019, Logan flew from Denver to Paris and stayed for 2 weeks. In June 2021, he flew from Chicago to Lisbon, stayed for almost 5 months, flying from Munich to Reykjavik to Boston in November 2021. He had stayed in Europe for 5 months doing who knows what. By all accounts, it seems like he was traveling around Europe. No one knows what he was doing. No one knows if he was working, where he got the money for this. Logan always grew up poor. The most he ever worked was at McDonald's, which probably wouldn't have paid terribly well to give you the ability to travel around Europe for 5 months. So Logan then arrived back in America in November 2021, and he was due to fly again back to Europe. He was due to fly from Newark Airport to Reykjavik in February 2022, but he didn't show up for the flight. At that stage, he was in Concord, New Hampshire. So you have this like international man of mystery who is a killer, and no one knows what he was doing the entire time. Logan ended up in Concord, New Hampshire, when he returned to America in November 2021. And he ended up working at a McDonald's under the name Arthur Kelly. His co-workers said he was quiet, had no friends, but, was a hard worker, always showed up, was never late. He worked at McDonald's from November 21 to February 22 when he left, saying he had gotten a new job, but not giving any more detail than that. Now his co-workers would say he had anger issues. He was a pretty unpleasant guy. He'd always flip the lid, was shouting and roaring. He was very protective over his little backpack. Who knows what he had in there. And yeah, mainly one thing they said was they wouldn't be surprised to find out he was a serial killer. It appears he had been living in the woods full time. So tracking this very dangerous person, where was he now? Now that, after the Reids were killed, they had his name, they had his identity, but not where he was, because he wasn't in Concord. They soon learned that Arthur Kelly had purchased a bus ticket from Boston to Albany, and then switched to go to Burlington, Vermont. What he did then, they didn't know, but they did soon learn that he had purchased a flight ticket to fly from New York JFK to Berlin, Germany in October. The address he had used to purchase that flight ticket was a phony address that led to a courthouse in Burlington, but he had used a real number. The number was from a burner phone, but they could still track that phone. On October 11th, it was pinging from the woods just outside the city of Burlington. Following the pings, it led them to the city, and they eventually saw him at a Price Chopper, a grocery store. They followed him to a library, and that's where the police struck.
Negative. Still the same. Please.
We're gonna have the two plainclothes guys make the approach, and we'll just be there.
Please do not move.
What? Do not
Put your
move.
hands behind your back. Do it now. Hey, police.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Stop resisting.
What have I done? What have I done?
All right, sit down. Careful.
Good to get all the answers you want.
He was arrested and taken into custody. When questioned, he denied having anything to do with the double murder of the Reids. In his possession at the time of his arrest was a handgun, believed to be the murder weapon, the gun he used to shoot Stephen and Wendy Reid. He had a fake Romanian passport under the name Claude Zemo. Claude Zemo, where he got that. He had no valid identification for himself, and he had $7,000, over $7,000 in cash. Who knows where he got that money? He must have been working very hard at McDonald's. I don't think so, seeing as how he hadn't worked there since February. Where he got this money, nobody knows. It's like a Bourne movie with the fake passports and the gun and the money. A mystery, but an unsettling one. They then later found his tent and his campsite in the woods outside Burlington, just like it was in Concord. And their phone chargers, food, other items, Mountain Dew Code Red, of course, lots of it. Logan Clegg pleaded not guilty to the charges, which were 2 counts of second-degree murder. Logan's trial began in 2023. The prosecution had, well, pretty much everything I laid out for you.
Investigators conducted an interview of him on October 12th of 2022. During the interview, he claimed he was not in Concord on April 18th of 2022. He claimed that he had left Concord in February or March. He claimed he didn't use a tent while in Concord. He claimed that he didn't stay in the wooded area near Alton Woods or the wooded area along the Marsh Loop Trail. He even denied knowing the name Arthur Kelly. He denied having a gun. And you will learn that despite being confronted with the information that investigators had learned over the months-long investigation, the defendant continued to try to conceal his murders.
His defense, not really a whole amount of much. In fact, other than kind of just word vomiting, they could basically only come up with, well, ballistic science can't tell you like 100,000,000%, which bullets a gun came from. So therefore, the gun he had may not be the same one that was used to kill the Reids when... Yeah, pretty sure it can. Basically, the defense was like, science is fake. Fake news.
He had nothing to do with the Reids. He was not in hiding from a murder. He was hiding from a probation violation out of Utah. She could not count the number of possible guns that were out there that could have fired the bullets that killed the Reids. And she could not say that Logan Clegg's gun was the gun that fired it.
No. But no, they could pretty definitively tell it was the murder weapon and that he had used it. And so the trial did not go well for old Logan Clegg. Claude Zemo. Interesting name, I'll give him that.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say you find the defendant guilty?
Yes.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Would you please say aloud?
Yes.
Thank you.
In late 2023, Logan Clegg was found guilty on all charges, and he received 2 sentences of 50 years to life in prison for what he did to a beloved couple who just wanted to help people.
Those detectives did everything in their power in the last year to cheat me out of getting a proper trial. If the Supreme Court agrees with me, then I may very well get a new trial. I can promise with confidence that my innocence will be made clear and that I will win.
Logan Clegg is a stone-cold, violent murderer, nothing more. He shot and killed Stephen and Wendy Reid for no reason. His statements today ring hollow. He deserves nothing less than a sentence that fully reflects the magnitude of his crimes, and for that reason, I'm going to fully impose the sentences as recommended by the state. On charge ID 202-7584, a finding of guilty is entered. The defendant is
The real story of Logan Clegg is a bizarre mystery. He killed 3 people, one of which is dubious as to what exactly is true. Now, as I said, charges were never pressed against him, but it just seems to be very weird as to what exactly happened. But the fact that he killed 2 in the way he did is chilling, and he almost got away with it. Very nearly almost got away with it, escaping America to Europe. It was only 1 bank statement, and 1 goddamn him purchasing vitamins that led to them finding out his real name. Why he killed the Reids is unknown. There's theories, maybe it was race-related. They were a mixed-race couple, but there's never any kind of proof that Logan would have cared about that. Other things, maybe they met each other on the trail and they got into some kind of argument. Maybe that happened, or maybe he was just a serial killer, budding or actual serial killer who murdered 2 people. On one side you could say, well, he was a young man, he was mentally ill, and he just shot them. But then on the other hand, it's well, maybe he was, but he also knew very well how to hide what he had done and get away with it for a very long time. How he had $7,000 on cash in him, nobody knows. I mean, he had been known to do burglaries, armed burglaries, so maybe he probably likely stole that money. How was he able to travel so much? Who knows? Why he traveled so much? Who knows? What he was doing when he traveled? Again, did he kill other people out in them woods? Maybe. Logan has a lot of similarities to other serial killers. Namely how he was able to go on the run, how he camped out in the woods, he was able to hide his identity, he left very little trace of anything behind. Israel Keyes comes to mind, a man who travelled all over America and to places outside of America like Canada and Mexico, murdering people, just randomly killing people. Israel Keyes often lived in the woods, didn't leave a trace behind, had murder kits all around the place, campsites. It's very strange. Armed burglaries, serial killer speciality, something Logan did at least twice. So much about Logan we do not know. Where he was, what he was doing. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out he killed elsewhere. So yeah, there you go. That's the story of Logan Clegg, Sinead. And it's ultimately incredibly tragic what happened to such a beloved couple. The Reids who just wanted to give back and did give back their entire lives to try and help people in need around the world. So, Logan Clegg, monster. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here with me as always. Means a lot to me. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below. And yeah. Listen, please check out the That Chapter podcast, which has a new episode out every Monday morning, and you can check out my other stuff in the description if you want, but, you know, you do you. Next video will be out in a couple of days, so please give it a go, but until then, take care of each other and yourselves. Do it for me, because I love you. My kid.